Hello. Welcome to Normal America Show. Your host, robnoerr. Got a great show for you this evening. And I know what you're saying. Rob always says he has a great show. Is it ever really great, though? I don't know. But tonight's show is great. I assure you. Greatness in store. Had an interesting day. I got to spend some time with my son, Hank, before he went to the in-laws for the evening. Getting ready for my first family Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow. So, yeah, it's a good day. I hope all of you had a fantastic day, too. Should I just do the whole stream in like a Bob Ross S-tone? It was a good day for me. I hope everyone else had a good day. Let's talk a little about the world of politics. Nah, doesn't suit my style. What can you do, though? I had an interesting experience here. We had to go we're doing a family Thanksgiving at the in-laws tomorrow, and my wife has to make stuffing balls. So we ordered a Walmart pickup, which I don't know if you've ever done this, but we do it quite frequently, which is where you just get in the app, you order all the stuff you want, and then Walmart gathers it up for you, and you show up and they just put it in your car. I never did that until I had a kid, and now it makes sense because sometimes it's difficult to take a toddler grocery shopping. So it's like, well, it just makes it simpler. Anyways, the wife ordered a couple things she needed, like a $50, $60 order, and one of it was bread to make stuffing balls. They didn't have bread, so they'll swap it out for a different type of bread, and they were just like, we don't have any. I was like, that's stupid. Of course they have bread, right? And we went in, and she uses white bread to make her stuffing balls. They legitimately had one loaf of white bread. Like, it was just bare. There was wheat bread. There was rye bread. Let's talk about Biden getting called out finally for quid pro quo and human trafficking. Did I miss something in the news today? What did I miss? Post me a link. We'll talk about it. I know that they started the investigation, but one of my thoughts on the Daily Wire getting the rights to the Atlas Shrugged film. I have mixed feelings about the Daily Wire. I think Shapiro's far more a fan of the establishment Republican Party than me, and he sort of runs the Daily Wire. But I think on a lot of the culture issues, they've been good. I don't mind, the Daily Wire doing Atlas Shrugged. I haven't seen any of their movies. I know they've been panned, but they've been panned by film critics that are wrong 90% of the time, so I don't know. But, yeah, I don't know. The Daily Wire is Ben Shapiro's show. I did vote in Elon's poll, and I clicked yes to reinstate Trump. So it's up to the audience here. We'll do a little poll now for the 10 or so people that are watching. I have a story I could tell you about our trip into Walmart, but it's a little gross, a little personal, and I don't know if the audience wants it to get that blue here. So we'll just see what a couple people say. If you want to just keep it non-gross PG, we could do that. Or I could tell you a slightly gross story. It's up to you all. And then we'll quickly get into the thumbs up American flag. That's as good an answer as you'll get. There's my wife. She's watching. Okay. So, my wife and I are currently in an argument. Who has the better systems? Like your circulatory system, your digestive system, your respiratory system. I think she'll probably win. I think she's healthier system-wise than me. But I think that I have a pretty good digestive system because, and it gets a little gross here, I had never in my life that I could ever recall ever been constipated until I was 36 years old. And I knew what constipation was. I knew that it was a lot of people that I work with that have serious medical conditions that take a lot of medication. It could cause constipation. But I was unaware, and maybe I'm wrong, I was unaware that it's as common as it is amongst just sort of the average person. I thought this was something that like happened to 10% of people. But now that I've mentioned it to some people I know, people are like, yeah, that's a pretty common problem. So I think that then I'm doing pretty good if I haven't had that happen until I was 36. Anyways, I thought that was the worst day of my life. I got over it. But another thing that I'd been gassy in my life, but I've never had gas that made me feel like uncomfortable pressure. You see those commercials where people are like bloated, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, you're gassy. That's it. But today I had gas that was like a stomach ache. I was like, oh man, I feel okay other than that. But it was not a comfortable feeling. So I don't know if that's a common thing or not. Anyways, why am I bringing this up? Well, I was getting yelled at by my wife because I was a little gassy in the car. And we walk into Walmart and I was a little gassy. And she was not appreciative of the environment that was surrounding me. Yeah, see, Sparky rolling, coming in a good time. We're talking about gas problems. So I was a little gassy, being an adult about this here. And you have to figure, if you're gassy, there's going to be some release of pressure. So you pick your spots, right? Now, if you're polite, you try to wait until you're outside or you're by yourself. But sometimes if you find yourself in a situation where you're shopping, you're not going to be out of the store for 20 minutes. So eventually, you got to pick a spot, right? So you try an aisle with no one in or something like that. Now, here's the thing, too. These were silent. This was not audible. And I wasn't doing that good. There were a couple times the wife got mad at me. But then she made me go through the medicine section to pick up some Gas X, which I've never taken in my life. So I've taken Gas X for the first time in my life here before. So if I start twitching or something, you know what's going on. I'm having an allergic reaction to either the vaccine or Gas X, one of the two. But we went through the deodorant aisle, and there were these, I don't know what the polite word to call these two people are. It was a younger man and woman. My guess is 26 man and woman. And I would call them wieners, is what I would call them. They looked pretty wienerish to me. And they were opening all of the deodorants and taking the little plastic thing off and then smelling them all, like right up in their nose. And the guy had full beard. It's like, that's great. Getting some guy's mustache and... So when I go and buy a stick of deodorant, little did I know someone ripped the plastic off and had it up in their nose, And that's when I realized we can't rely on the government anymore. We are ruled by an establishment class of people that don't give a shit about us. They don't care about the average person. They don't care if you're gay. They don't care if you're straight, white, black, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, atheist. They don't care. They are a corrupt establishment globalist class that seeks to self-perpetuate, and they basically think they're a different species than us. All of us are so focused on elections and things like that, we forget the most positive changes we can make in life are through our own situations. What we as individuals are doing. And that's when I realized I can't rely on some sort of system, some governance or authority from the store of Walmart to handle this situation. I had to take care of it myself. And so the irony of someone childish like putting their nose in deodorants, I assume to find a scent that they found appealing. I would like to think that I gave them a scent that perhaps moved them along. and they no longer found it appealing to open all of these sticks of deodorant. And I think that more of us need to take matters in our own hands like that. So I like to think that, listen, with great power comes great responsibility. If you got to make sacrifices. Yes, my wife was embarrassed, had to sit in a car with a farty smelling guy for 20 minutes. But I did something with that. I did it. So yeah, I was proud of that. Also, then another story with that. I really should have did this. So my wife, as we're walking in, she's like, "I'm buying you some gas medication," and I was like, "I'm not taking it. I'm not taking the gas. I'm not a big medication fan." I'm like, "I'm not taking the gas meds." She's like, "Why?" I'm like, "It's like sleeping pills. You take them once, then every night you want to sleep, you got to take sleeping pills. That's the way it'll be with gas meds. Now I'll be stuck every day of my life just farting my brains out unless I take gas pills. That's how big pharma gets you." And she's like, "Shut the hell up. You're taking the gas pills." And I was like, "All right, I'll make you a deal." So my deal with my wife was I'd take the gas pills as directed, but she had to put them on the little treadmill or whatever for the checkout lady, and she had to say the following: "Those pills are for me. I'm gassy." And she was like, "No." And I was like, "What, are you worried that what the checkout lady thinks about you?" And she's like, "Fine, I'll do it." And then I forgot about it, and she didn't do it. But I wanted to film it. I was going to film it, and then that was going to be my YouTube video for today. Like, there you go. Instead we had a random situation come up. We're standing in line waiting for the person in front of us, and there's they got all the candy bars and all the gimmicky stuff there right by the register. And she's like, "There, you want a Mr. Beast, I don't know what it was, a Saya Berry chocolate bar or some shit?" And I was like, I know of Mr. Beast, but I don't think I've ever seen a video that he's done. I don't know what he does really. I just know he's a big streamer, a big YouTuber. I was like, but I know LA Beast. Now, LA Beast was this guy that used to do he was kind of like shoe nice. He'd drink a big 2 liters of Pepsi or eat hot stuff, and where he would do these crazy videos where he'd run through doors and walls and stuff. And it was kind of silly stuff. But he had this big campaign to bring back Crystal Pepsi. Was LA Beast's big thing. And so it was bring back Crystal Pepsi, bring back Crystal Pepsi. And then they did. And my wife brought it up. She's like, "Yeah, he was the Crystal Pepsi guy." I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "But then what happened?" I haven't seen him. I don't know if he's still streaming. But Crystal Pepsi, when it came back, it sucked. No one really liked it. Maybe this streamer put all of his clout in Crystal Pepsi, and then it fell flat, and now people are like, "I no longer want to watch this guy run through doorways or do crazy push-up challenges or food-eating challenges because he steered me in the direction of Crystal Pepsi, and it sucked." Shoe nice. There's a character, right? It fell flat. That is true. And so I'm just like, "Yeah, Crystal sucked. It was terrible, blah, 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 blah." And then we're walking away, and my wife's like, "Did you catch the name tag of the woman that checked us out?" I was like, "No." She's like, "Yeah, her name was Crystal. She probably thinks we're fucking with her." Because she's probably never heard of Crystal Pepsi in the first place. And so she's like, what are these characters doing? Just messing with me. Anyways, in that excitement, I forgot about the gas pill thing. And so there you go. That's my exciting live. So I'll leave you stew in the scent of those stories. I'm going to go fill up my water jug, and then we'll get back and we'll talk about politics. I should have been a stand-up comedian. I'm so good, though, right? what a show. People have said, Rob, you're the next Rush Limbaugh. Remember that episode of Rush's Show where he told fart jokes for the first 20 minutes and then got up and had dead air? I'm just saying, he was a little better than me. And as we're pissing around, I'll tell you one other thing. You might ask yourself, how much does Rob like us? I'll tell you how much I like you all. No, it's Friday night. I could... Oh, whoa. NB Cell says, robnoerr, more like come whore. Got him. I don't know what to say. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it. My streaming career's over. I regret to inform you, an insult so brilliant, I have no way of ever coming back from. Who cares that I have some of the sharpest political takes of the Twitch political community? I've been devastated. I only hope that I can continue to be a competent father and husband after such a burn. I guess I'll try to stick it out, but man, coming in hot, NB Cell, good stuff. Anyways, this is how much I like all of you. There's this new network that I found. It's like Netflix or something. It's called Freevee. 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 It sounds like TV, but it's Freevee. Anyways, I don't even know how I stumbled upon this. One day I was looking up monkey movies. My old friend Tom and me, we used to have a thing where we'd get drunk and watch monkey movies. And we, every once in a while, I like to check and see if there's any new monkey movies. And anyways, I found this TV show called Monkey Business, and I'm absolutely hooked on it. It's on the network Freevee. It is about a real place called Monkey World, which is in the UK. And they are a like chimp rescue facility. And anyways, the whole show is like, you know, just you get to know all these chimps. They got like 50 chimps and then, you know, a couple orangutans and some other types of monkeys. And they'll be like, the little Barry's having trouble with Sally there. Sally's the dominant female. And Barry tried to take her juice box today. And now let's see what's happening. And that's like the whole show. And it's like, great. Oh, super chat. 10 Canadian dollars. Thank you so much, D. Gulag. I will spend that on some Canadian maple syrup. Actually, I don't buy much syrup. My uncle makes it. So, but anyways, I foregoed watching more Monkey Business to be here with you all tonight because I would have watched it all night. It's a great show. I love it. It's better than reality TV. It's sort of like reality TV with monkeys. It's a free version of Amazon Prime. Okay, yeah, I didn't know what it was. But it's fantastic. There was a show I used to watch. It was called Meerkat Manor. If you're familiar with that, take out meerkats and put in monkeys. How could you go wrong? It's a great concept. But here we are talking politics on a Friday night. Hoping this gas pill starts to work. So the second hour, we're going to talk about what the title is, which is part 3 of my Pointing the Finger series for the midterm failure for the Republicans, conservatives, and more important, the populist. So we'll talk about that at some point here. I did take the pill. I caved. I hope it worked. It's about freaking time. How do I not have a bigger audience? Tell me that. Here, you want me to have a bigger audience? I'm ready. Yeah. Politics stories of the day. Let's get some drama music. You ready? Let's see if I can find something. There's all these left-wing politics streamers that are what's the word I'm looking? Let's hope I can find something here. Oh, this looks good. Dramatic music, no copyright. Okay, here we go. Okay. Stories today. The new Republican House says they will investigate Joe Biden and his connections to family businesses. Let me turn the music down a little. His connections to family businesses, which may have involved things like human trafficking, working with the government of China, and sending taxpayer dollars in the form of a quid pro quo. Ukraine still tries to get us into nuclear war by lying about a missile that ended up hitting in Poland. Donald Trump will be being looked at by Jack Smith, a special investigator appointed by Merrick Garland. Inflation continues to run amok. Fentanyl overdoses hitting all-time highs. FTX, a crypto Ponzi scheme, one of the Democrats' largest donors, is still being ignored by much of the mainstream media. Inflation remains unchecked. Military readiness, low points haven't seen since the advent of the Cold War. Division in this country running high. But today, like any good politics streamer on Twitch, we start with this. Who did Destiny bang today? And what are the fallouts from it? More drama streams. Which streamer had sex with which streamer? Don't you care to know the ins and outs? We got a lineup of 15 guests that will come on and talk to you about the sex life of some of the most uninteresting, terrible people that have ever existed. I guess there's just nothing to talk about in the news for the fantastic left-wing politics stream. Dylan got ejected from the Biden rally? Didn't see that. I had people ask me, what do you think about that thing? Destiny and Lav and whatever. I know Destiny. I don't know Lav. I don't give a shit. Here's my advice, right? I don't give much advice. Here's some advice. Find someone you love. Get married. Have kids. Don't be in an open relationship. Don't cheat on your husband or wife. The end. That's it. Now, it doesn't make for good content. That shit don't make for good content. You know. And what's funny is, I hear all these people, because I dabble a little in other people's discords. People were like, oh man, I'm tired of this drama. No, you're not. You're not. Most people aren't. Most of those shitheads want the drama. That's true. So, hey, I say more power to them. Who am I to judge? I used to watch professional wrestling. I watch monkey TV shows, so to each their own. But, that was the real winner, I said the other day, of Trump's declaration that he was running again. The real winner was, the media that, oh, good, we could keep Trump in the news cycle for another 2 years, and left-wing politics streamers, they'd have something other than each other's sex life to talk about for a couple days, and then right back to the drama. Yeah, go ahead and link it. What did he get kicked out of the rally for? Weird. Oh, it wasn't a Biden rally? I don't know. So, yeah. Yeah, don't worry. I'm not going to spend. That's it. That's all I have to say about the drama. I don't give a shit. Honestly, I will say this. The last thing I'll say, it's not about any of that type of drama. I will say this, though. There are people that I like a lot that I stream with and that are content creators. There are people that I disagree with, but I still kind of like. There are people that I really dislike, and everything in between. I don't wish anyone, any sort of terrible life situation. I don't want anyone to get cheated on. I don't want anyone to be accused of sexual assault when they weren't. I don't want anyone to be a victim of sexual assault, regardless of my feelings on all that stuff's terrible. But I will say that it seems like certain people put themselves in situations intentionally because they think that drama helps their content, or not even that. I mean, I know people like this in real life that just thrive on drama. So, hey, whatever. That's it. That's all I have to say. Yeah, the Fetterman ads. Yeah, the ads were getting ridiculous. Someone as a troll must have signed me up for Fetterman's mailing list. I still get like Fetterman emails twice a day from Fetterman, like, "Oh no, Trump's running. Can you please send $5?" I'm like, who's writing this? First off, this email didn't start with the word "good night." It can't be Fetterman. I stand for fracking. I stand for fracking. One of the most articulate debate performances I have ever heard. So what to talk about? There's some stories to talk about. Let's just start. We'll hit some rapid fire, like for the next half hour, some quick takes on some of these stories. Special counsel investigating Trump. It's funny, it's the two movies theater. Depending on who you're watching, the story is radically different, right? So I saw people that I really like Julie Kelly, who's excellent. You should follow Julie Kelly on Twitter. She's one of the best people when it comes to looking at these court cases of like the January 6th defendants and things like that. So she's currently like in the courtroom watching the Oathkeeper trial and the Proud Boy trial and stuff like that. Her take on this was like, this is a loss for the Democrats because they didn't want to kick it to a special counsel because they know that that'll be less of a chance of, getting Trump, I guess, in the end. And so they're not happy. And then you see sort of the Democrat partisans that are saying, oh, this is it. Special counsel, yay. That means that Merrick Garland knows that he got him. And it's just, my feeling is, it doesn't matter if they have him or not. If they feel like charging him, they will. And with a DC jury, they would be able to get a conviction. No doubt in my mind. My feeling has always been that you could probably charge 95% of our political leaders with some sort of crime. Who was it? Was it Philip Mudd, former CIA agent, that was like, look, the crime of mishandling classified information, pretty much everyone with a clearance ever has done that. So it's not so much, well, did Trump mishandle classified information? There's a question as to whether he did, because as president, the mere act of claiming that it's declassified could be considered declassification. But to not even beleaguer that point, let's just assume that he did mishandle classified information. It's not whether or not he should be charged. I don't mind if they charge Trump, but then they also charge Hillary, and they charge Bill Clinton, and they charge everyone else that mishandled classified information. No problem. I don't care. That's always been my feeling. The problem is the double standard. That's the problem. But I've said all along that if they find Trump to be a threat, they will charge him. So I think they'll charge him. As to what we found out now, the Washington Post and some other places have came out after the election, the midterm, and said, well, you remember that story about the nuclear secrets that Donald Trump stole? Yeah, it turns out that's probably not what happened. In fact, the whole idea that he was stealing classified material for financial gain to sell it to our enemies, turns out that's probably not what happened. Turns out that he kept things as, you ready for this? Mementos. That's right. In an unprecedented action in our country's history, the Department of Justice for an administration went after his political opponent, raided their home because they took some mementos. Thank God we found out about that after the midterm. But it doesn't matter. They'll charge him because it's corrupt. That's what's going on. And you'll remember, when this raid happened, I was trying to talk to as many left-wing streamers as I can. They don't want to talk to me because they know what happens when they talk to me. But the few that did talk to me, you'll notice the type of questions I was asking them. I was saying, well, in order for this raid to be justified, let's set out the parameters that you think would have to be met to justify this unprecedented raid. So, for example, I talked to Pisco about this. And we talked about several criteria. The alleged crime would have to be very serious. The probable cause would have to be very high. all other avenues would have had to have been exhausted. For example, if it was like they asked Trump like 50 times, like, could you please hand this document over? And he was just like, no. If they didn't do that, or if he was cooperating at least partially, then they shouldn't have done this. The reason that I was asking those questions was because I knew what the end result of this would be, as I told people on stream. The end result would be that it was not that Donald Trump was trying to sell nuclear secrets. That wasn't what happened. That likely what happened was that there were two types of documents that Trump kept. For two reasons. One, it was just stuff that he thought he was allowed to keep for keepsake purposes. Or second, it was stuff that he was afraid to give back because he thought it was incriminating to the people he would be giving it back to. For example, documents that showed the corruption of the FBI that he wouldn't want to hand back to the FBI because they will bury those documents. Thanks a long way up. I can't help myself. But the reason you say, Bloody Monday, thanks for the follow. You say if my stream wasn't about dealing with the brainwash. But listen, when you talk to people like that, you get more insight, right? So this was the easiest way for me to clarify what I think about the situation. To talk to someone that's going to say, yes, they should have raided Trump, and say, okay, let's go through why. So one of the reasons where everyone agreed that it would have to be that it was very serious. The material they were looking for was very serious. And the motivation was very serious. Does that sound serious to you? Keepsakes? Sound serious? But hey, that's the new standard, right? So interesting, that came out after the election. But oh boy, when you went to the political streaming sphere, when the raid happened, Trump's selling nuclear weapons. Let's turn on MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post. Oh my God, Trump, he's going to kill this country selling nuclear secrets. Oh my God, he endangered the lives of blah, 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 blah. Of course, some people, like I'm really important, chose to not interact with me because, in his words, he likes to stay in his bubble. There you go. So there's that story. The House said that they will investigate Joe Biden's business dealings, his connections to Hunter Biden's business dealings. We'll see what comes of this. I'm skeptical. It'll probably be a lot like Benghazi, which they'll release just enough information that if you're not just listening to the talking heads and you try to analyze the information yourself, you'll say, yeah, this proves that some measure of corruption occurred. But it'll be done in such a way where none of the corrupt ever end up facing consequences. That's my prediction for what will happen. So people bring up Benghazi a lot. Oh, what's with Benghazi? That was a waste of time. No, Benghazi, it was quite clear there was something there. And the something there was, this is what we could prove, this is beyond dispute, that the disastrous foreign policy intervention of NATO and the United States to overthrow Gaddafi made that country a haven for Islamic terrorists, and those Islamic terrorists attacked and killed members at our embassy. And the Obama administration was afraid that that would look bad for them in the elections, and so they lied and said it wasn't an act of terrorism or it didn't have anything to do with that. And instead it had to do with a video that a person made that was considered insulting to Islam, which was a lie. It was designed to cover up the incompetence and corruption of the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton at the State Department, which led to the deaths of people at our embassy. In addition to that, which wasn't proven, but I highly suspect was the case, and there's evidence to suggest this, there was also a gun running operation from our State Department through Islamic terrorists, because we were actually funding the terrorists to overthrow Gaddafi, that then those same people that we gave weapons to and funded ended up being the ones that attacked the embassy, which was another reason to cover it up. But Republicans, drip, 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 the establishment, bury the story, and that's it. But not to spend too much time on Benghazi. It's just funny. The left always brings that up as like, oh, Benghazi. Right. Maybe if Benghazi would have been dealt with properly, those kids that the Biden administration bombed in Afghanistan that called them ISIS-K would still be alive today. Because when we allow our foreign policy apparatchik to mercilessly kill people in the name of U.S. security, and then they don't face consequences when they find out that they lie or they made huge mistakes or they were corrupt, they do it again and again and again and again and again. But Benghazi's over with now. I remember. So I think it'll be dripped out, but nothing will be done of consequences. Now, overarchingly, what do I think? I don't have to repeat myself on what I think about the laptop and stuff like that. I'll be brief in my points on this. I'm sure we'll talk about it more at length as the story progresses. Worse than what was on the laptop was the intelligence agencies, the mainstream media, the Department of Homeland Security, tech companies, social media companies colluding to censor the story of the Biden family criminality before the 2020 election. That's more serious, right? I've talked about this at length. I said, I'm one of the first clearest people I heard talk about this. Ask yourself this question. What if the elections weren't stolen? What if there wasn't fraud? What if the 2020 election, there wasn't fraud? What does that show? Well, it shows that we have institutions that are basically able to pick and choose the winners of major national races because they, through their propaganda, are able to convince a plurality of people on an issue or on a candidate. In other words, if Google wants Biden to win, Biden wins. What does that mean for our society going forward? That's the question I asked. And people said, what are you talking about? I said, for example, what if they intentionally manipulate through algorithms stories that are critical of one candidate, but bury stories that are critical of the other? Partisans on either side won't be swayed much by that, but the moderates, the people in the middle that the election's decided by, they will. I got more to say about that in a moment, too. So that issue remains, and we're learning more about that through the Intercept's reporting. Time magazine put out an article that said a shadowy cabal fortified the election for Joe Biden that spoke to this. The Intercept has reported that the Department of Homeland Security was involved directly with communicating with places like Twitter, Facebook, etc., to censor stories and people that were critical of the candidates and the issues that they liked. That's going to be the big story to come out of this. More details on this. I don't give a shit that Hunter Biden smoked crack. I don't give a shit that he hired hookers. I do care if those hookers were humanly trafficked or if they were underage, but I don't care. I don't smear that on Joe Biden at all. In other words, if a president's son is off doing illicit things that are horrible, I don't blame the father. Now, if the father is using his connection to get him out of trouble, that's an issue, right? But the left is trying to make this about like, oh, you're so concerned about Hunter Biden smoking crack. I am not. I don't care at all. At all. I really don't. My concern with the alleged story that we hear is that Hunter Biden was trading on his father's influence with our biggest enemies, such as the Communist government of China, in order to enrich himself and his father. And that our president may be beholden to our biggest foreign adversary. That I care about. And the left cares about that too, because they spent 4 years telling us they needed to see Trump's tax returns in case he had businesses in Russia, because that would have been a compromise to him, because Russia's our enemy. So now they'll bullshit you and say, who cares about Hunter Biden? That's the story. My concern with this story is less Hunter Biden and more what it shows his father was doing. That's it. Yeah, China, Russia, Ukraine, the list goes on and on. And it's not just the Bidens. Politician in the United States volunteer or, votes or not even votes, sometimes just through executive power, sends money to foreign country. People in foreign country employ family members of politician that sends that money. Or how about this one? Crypto scam. Crypto Ponzi scam. Cool crypto billionaire Ponzi scammer. Gets bunches of billions of dollars. Works with U.S. regulators in the Biden administration. Supposedly to come up with rules and regulations for crypto. Donates millions upon millions of dollars to Democrats and anti-Trump people. Found out to be a huge Ponzi scheme. Turns out the very regulators that should have caught this were benefiting by their political allies getting millions upon millions of dollars in donations. And they just so happen to not find the problem. Isn't it great? Oh, and by the way, that crypto scheme, FTX, also, there was some sort of connection, which I need to look into more, with Ukraine working with FTX. Isn't that great? But don't worry, Zelensky's a good guy. I mean, he did lie to try to get us into World War III because it was actually his country that had a bomb hit Poland, and he lied even when he knew it wasn't and blamed Russia. The good guys, everyone. The good guys. I'm so glad we sent billions of dollars. Don't worry, we're sending billions more. It's not ending. Isn't that great? It's wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. The other thing I think is funny about the Hunter Biden, the argument that the new Congress is going to investigate Biden, it's so funny and predictable to now just watch every bullshitter on the left, come out and say, let me turn my hat backwards to the left, Oh, so now that's what the Republicans take Congress, and they're just hacks. I thought they were worried about inflation. What about inflation? What about inflation? Instead, they're investigating the Bidens. That's just so petty. That's so damaging. First, inflation, what's that? Inflation? You mean that transitory thing? Oh, now that Republicans won the House, now it's a problem all of a sudden. Recession, here we come. You might say, wait a minute, economically, are we in much worse of a place 2 days after Republicans came in office than 2 days before? No, that doesn't matter. It's just now they could call what was obviously a recession because they could point the finger at Republicans, which is the game plan. So now all of a sudden, Republicans haven't even been sworn in the new Congress, and they're already like, oh, well, they're not going to deal with inflation. Inflation? What the fuck are you talking about? I just heard the Democrats tell me the entire way leading up to the midterms that our economy is kicking ass. Remember Biden telling us inflation was 0% month to month? I thought that shit was solved. Now all of a sudden it's a problem. And, I mentioned this briefly yesterday. I mean, the gall of you have to really, look, you have to give it up for left-wingers. You have to give it up for people that support the Democratic Party. It must be so easy to live your life so shamelessly that you don't have to apply any standard whatsoever other than that. Thank you so much, Mix-a-Lot, for the cheer. You don't have to apply any standard whatsoever other than the standard of winning and power. That's it. You could shamelessly lie. Blatantly. It doesn't matter. Not at all. These people, for 4 years under Trump, all they wanted to do was lock Trump up, investigate him, a Russian spy, impeachment 1, impeachment 2, whistleblowers matter. We need to lock Trump up, blah, blah, blah. That's all they talked about for 4 years. Then Trump's out of office. That's all they talked about for 2 years then. January 6th committee. Trump shouldn't be allowed to run again. He needs to be locked up. We need to subpoena Trump. We need to go after Jim Jordan. We need to go after Matt Gaetz. That's all they did. And then, as soon as they lose one of the branches of Congress, they have the gall to be like, well, you can't investigate us. That's ridiculous. All the Republicans are going to do is investigate. Just tell those people kindly to shut their mouths. Who cares what they say? Yes, investigate away. Absolutely. What they're really saying is, please don't do the same thing to us that we did to you. Because unlike you, we're actually guilty. That's what they're trying to say. What do I think on the Twitter debate? What debate? This guy, Men Lover, 42069 America. Can't be a troll with a name like that. Thanks so much, Mix-a-Lot. Very serious guy here. A lover of men. Fantastic. 420. Must have been born April 20th. 1969. Excellent. America. I would have preferred it was capitalized, but good name nonetheless. Says, yo, on God, I'm going to shoot my shot because life short. FR, you into guys or nah? Well, I speak English, so it's difficult to translate this. I don't mind guys at all. I'm happily married. I'm not sexually attracted to guys, but I'm definitely into a lot of guys such as politicians, philosophers, etc., and listening to what they have to say. If not, it's all good, but even still, if you want to be discreet, I don't mind. Just hit me up in... wait, I missed this. Just hit me up in Twitch DMs. I could wear a wig and do a voice too if that helps. Is this a casting call? Or sorry, happily married. I believe you're looking for left-wing Twitch, but thanks so much. It's no problem. It's at least kind of interesting. Some of the... that was pretty creative. I agree. My brother... I should behave. Okay. I already said my brother. I was going to say some guy I knew, but it was my brother. My brother had a like Call of Duty name or something once that was Bong Smoker 420. And I was just like, that's got to be the most generic weedhead name I've ever heard. What's up, Gizmo? What philosophers do I like? I'm kind of bullshitting you. I'm not big into philosophy. I'll be honest. I like Thomas Paine. I wouldn't call that philosophy. Those are more political writing. Rights of Man's and Common Sense. I enjoyed reading that. I read Jordan Peterson. I like some of what Jordan Peterson has to say. I think he's sort of fallen off the rails here recently. But 10 Rules for Life was okay. But I don't read a lot of philosophy. I'm more of a common man person. Anyways, so yeah, that's funny that's now the Democrat line and the left-wing talking heads line. And there's one other thing I wanted to talk about before I bash Trump here. So yesterday, as I'm going off stream, someone says on the chat, I did an interview with a friend of the show, Casimir, last night. And so we just talked with Casimir. That was almost the whole show. But then we ended and I was just like, hey, thanks everyone for being here. And someone put in the chat, oh man, Twitter's on fire. And I was like, oh, what happened? Did they bring Trump back? Whatever. So I go downstairs, I get a shower, I get into bed, and I check my phone before I go to bed, and I go to Twitter, and I'm like, what happened? And everyone's just, the first thing I see is just a bunch of people like, well, if this is the last day of Twitter, I'm going to post this, and I'm like, okay. And it was left-wing political people I saw doing this, but also like non-political people, like sports people and stuff. I was like, what? Maybe there's some announcement. So I'm like scrolling like, well, what happened? Did Elon Musk announce like we're shutting it down? I don't know. And it was just the story that I had heard earlier in the day, that he had let go of a bunch of people and that he basically had locked the doors and said people can't come in because presumably he's afraid he needs more security so people don't sabotage things. And it was funny because it's like, oh, well, I don't know anything about engineering or server upkeep and things of that nature, what it takes to have a place like Twitter run, how many people it takes. I don't know. I'm not going to claim to know any of that. But even if it requires an awful lot of people, it seems strange to me that if you fired people that it would just stop running. Like, is there someone like on a hamster wheel jogging that's keeping the Twitter servers going? And it's like, oh, sorry, dude, you got to go home. And that's just like, everything powers down and that's it. I don't know. Like, even if it does require a lot of people, I thought that would be like troubleshooting stuff. Like, well, every once in a while a problem comes up and then a person needs to be there to solve the problem. But that would seem to be a bold prediction that this is the last night of Twitter then. And of course it wasn't. And then all kinds of questions arise like, okay, what if it turns out that you didn't need 7,500 people to run Twitter, you only need 50? What are the implications of that? I don't know. Maybe a week from now it'll be a huge mistake. Maybe Elon will hire more people. Maybe it turns out some of the people he let go he'll bring back. I don't know. But it seems that there is a vested interest of a certain class of people to make sure that we all think that 7,500 people need to be there to run Twitter. And this is on two levels. The first level is on sort of those types of employees, the white-collar worker that's making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. What if it turns out that most of them aren't doing much? And not just at Twitter, but at Facebook, at Google. And what if it's not just social media companies? What if it's tech companies all over? What if it turns out that really, and I've heard that there's a distribution, a name for this, that basically the theory is in most high-profile companies, 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. I believe that's probably true. It might even be more stark in the social media world. So there's probably people legitimately working really hard, but most of the people are probably barely doing nothing. I envision like the movie Office Space, you know, when he goes in and he's really honest and he's talking to the Bobs and he's like, you know, I'd say in any given week, you know, I probably do 2 hours of actual work. Like, that's how I envision most of this is. They're working from home. They're, you know. But those people have a vested interest in keeping that lie going, right? This doesn't work in the blue-collar world. If you're a coal miner and you're just down there shooting the shit and on your phone, you know, like, oh, I got my cafe latte. I'm just going to take this, you know, yard chair down in the coal mine and just have a seat and dick around and playing Angry Birds, you know. Like, it's noticeable. Everyone knows. They're like, hey, you can't do that. You're fired. But in the white-collar world, if your job's to make sure this system's running and the system's running, maybe you could get away with not doing much work. Is it the Pareto distributions? That's what it's called? Right. What were even the job titles or the job descriptions that these 7,500 people were doing? I'd be interested to know. Now, I have no doubt that many of them weren't living up to the expectations of their job. But even beyond that, just what are the, like, for example, let's say that it's legit that it requires 7,500 people, but that's because 6,500 of them are working on new features. Well, then you might say, well, then it looks like there's not going to be new features. But that doesn't mean Twitter that exists now won't exist. Right? So I'll plead ignorance that I don't know. But it just was amazing to me, like, for people to make predictions that bold. This is it. This is the end of Twitter. It's like, okay, you're going to look like a dumbass if it's not. I don't know. It could be. I would be very skeptical that it'll happen in one night. But maybe you're right. But okay, it didn't. And so now what it'll be? Oh, this week? Okay. And what if it doesn't this week? Then what? And it turns out, whoops, maybe a lot of CEOs just will realize like, geez, I wonder if I have way more employees than are necessary. So of course those people are going to be like, oh, well, you need us. The other thing is there's a class of people, and that is establishment leftists, that really feel like, well, if we can't have Twitter in the image that we like, which is censoring the political candidates and the political ideologies we don't like, then no one should have it. And I was talking to my wife, this is a similar argument that I had about Section 230. Not to get too technical because I'm not a technical person, but Section 230 was basically special protections that were offered to social media companies like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, etc. And what these protections did was, in effect, treat these companies as platforms and not publishers. So imagine, for me in my little town growing up, we had a post office, and at the post office was a bulletin board. And you could post whatever you wanted on that bulletin board. You could put guitar lessons, or I'll mow your yard, or chicken dinner at the church, or fire hall looking for donations, or what, lost dog, right? That was it. And within reason, if you probably didn't want profanity and stuff like that, then that was it. It wasn't, if you put, come cheer for my softball team, they didn't remove it because they're like, we don't like that softball team. It was a platform, just a board for people to put stuff up. It wasn't publishing decisions being made. That's in effect what they were saying Facebook is, or Twitter. It is the public square. The alien tongue says, Rob, you just admitted you have no idea how it works, and then you continue to speculate like your usual dumbass self. No, admitting your deficiencies, but then going on to say how you imagine something works isn't something that we should shy away from. You say my usual self. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a generous offer. Alien tongue, pick any topic you want. Call in right now. I'll set up a timer to make sure you have even time as me. You said that I'm a dumbass as usual. It will be easy for you to shame me on any amount of topics that you want. Any topic, we'll limit it to this, right? Any topic that I've talked about in the last 2 weeks. So anything regarding any of the political situations, we talk about this Twitter, anything you like within that framework. Go ahead, call in, right? I'm a dumbass. It'll be easy. Anyways, as we wait. I don't have a phone. I don't have a computer. I'm actually at my job right now. I just had a few minutes to comment on that. Yeah, we know. Ah. Yeah, 95% they run. Anyways, what was I talking about before distracted by that genius? So with Section 230, the argument is, well, they need special protections because they're this platform, so you shouldn't be held to the same standard as a publisher. So for example, if I'm the New York Times, I choose what to put in my paper. And if I put something that is libelous in my paper, then I could be sued as the owner of the New York Times. Or if I put something that is a call to violence or something that is a call to criminality, and that occurs, then I could be sued because I published that. I'm responsible to some degree for what's published in my paper. But if I'm a public platform, you don't sue the guy who put up the bulletin board. You don't sue him. I'm just a platform. I just put a bulletin board up. Right? That's the argument. Well, the problem is these companies cease to become platforms when they decide to remove content based on their ideological criteria. If they're removing content like, well, we just choose to remove all calls to violence, fine. But when they allow left-wing calls to violence to largely remain, but go after right-wing calls that usually aren't even calls to violence, that's when they're acting as a publisher. And so they should lose those Section 230 protections because they are not acting as a platform, they're acting as a publisher. And every time you make this sort of argument, inevitably this is what happens. This is the answer you'll get from people on the left. This is what they'll say. But Rob, if we revoke Section 230 protections, what would happen would be places like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, they wouldn't allow any political discussion because they'd be so worried that they would be sued by something that they would just end all political discussion. To which my response is, okay, that's acceptable. Because what they're really telling you is, well, we only have two choices. One, we can have these social media platforms exist that give a huge advantage to the left by overwhelmingly censoring dissident people on the right and even dissident people on the left in collusion with the government, or it doesn't exist. In other words, I don't find it appealing that they're saying, well, we need to be able to censor you to have this platform, or else we might be censored too. Okay. Yes, Section 230 is part of the payment processes are a problem as well. There's a lot of problems that go with it. That, I think, is a lot what's happening with Twitter here. Remember, the issue with Musk taking Twitter, I mean, if Musk is some crazy right-winger, right? Why did he say today, we're not sure if we're bringing Trump back? We're not bringing Alex Jones back. By the way, I was amazed at Alex Jones' video he put up. If you haven't seen it, it's actually quite amazing. Elon Musk came out and was asked, will you bring Alex Jones back? And he just said no. And so you would expect Alex Jones to be like, Elon Musk, just part of the establishment. This son of a bitch claimed to be for free speech, but he's still keeping me censored. Like, that's kind of what you would expect Alex Jones to say. And Alex Jones basically said the opposite. He's like, yeah, of course, I don't mind it at all. Basically, Elon Musk is under incredible pressure from the governments of Europe, the government of the United States. He's getting letters. He's being told you have to keep certain people off. And so his best hope is that Musk, thank you so much, Aftershock. Really appreciate it for the sub. His best hope, Alex Jones' best hope for Musk is that he makes small incremental changes until he gets enough momentum to push back against these authoritarians. So he's like, absolutely, I expect him. If he was just like, sure, bring Alex Jones on, then they would shut him down. So he's like, I don't mind, which is kind of clever of Alex Jones. Can I link the Alex Jones video? I saw it on my phone. I didn't have it on my computer, but let's see if I just search it on Twitter, which is somehow still up. It didn't collapse. Here's a link to it. But they still haven't brought Trump back. Again, I repeat myself, but they're not fearful that Elon Musk will censor lefties like they use Twitter to censor right-wingers. They're not worried about that. They have 95% control of the narrative through control of institutions. That's not enough for them. They need 100%. And so when they see one platform go from overwhelmingly left-wing establishment narrative to, well, we're going to try to moderate. We'll still be on average left-wing, but we'll try to be a little more moderate in our approach. They can't handle. They're losing their shit. They can't handle that. No, it's the end of the world. Now they're making the exact inverse arguments. You know, how many times when you heard people saying, look, this is the public square. You can't censor people based on political beliefs. You can't censor a candidate for president for one of the parties. It's the public square. And over, the left said, they're a private company. They could do what they want. So they're the private company. And so now that it's like, okay, Elon Musk bought it. Now they're like, oh my God, we need to look into this. How can a billionaire just buy one of the most important technologies, which is, it's the new public square? And that's what he did. And he's running it into the ground. I thought it was a private company. I thought they could do whatever they wanted. Of course, they don't give a shit because they're not good faith. They know they're full of it. So that's why they're making the inverse argument. And I think a lot of what's going on with the, well, Twitter is dead thing is they want it to die. That's what's going on. If we can't have it, then neither can you. And we're like, we ain't getting it. It's not like some guy's buying Twitter. It's like, oh boy, I like robnoerr and his ideology. I know, I'll censor people that disagree with him. That shit ain't ever happening. One, I wouldn't want it to happen. But second, it's not going to happen. People like me aren't going to have institutional power for at least 50 years. It's just a guy that's like, I think it should be more even-handed. They can't handle that. Oh, no, then burn it down. And so their predictions that Twitter wasn't going to make it through last night weren't so much predictions as hopes. That's what they all wanted. They wanted it to crash and burn. But they're mixed, right? Because so many of these journalists, no one gives a shit anymore about MSNBC. No one's watching Don Lemon. No one knows who Aaron Rupar is or Taylor Lorenz is, other than the reach they get on places like Twitter. And so it's like Trump to them, right? They get all their clicks about Trump, but he's their biggest fear. So they need Trump to stay in the limelight, but that also means that he could get power, which they fear. It's the same with Twitter. Now they're freaking out and want Twitter to go away because it might be a more even-handed platform, but at the same time, if Twitter goes away, then who the hell is ever going to hear from them? Because they're the most uninteresting, unimpressive people in the world. But there is, someone mentioned philosophy, there is a sort of philosophical question that I think this sort of raises. And I kind of think I know the answer, or at least I have my opinion on the answer, but it's worth pointing out. So let me tell you a story, and that has to do with my work. So again, if you don't know, I work with people with developmental disabilities, autism, things like that. A lot of people with autism are very good with numbers, like amazing, fixated on numbers, like they might remember dates of people's birth dates that they meet one time, they'll remember it the rest of their life, or mathematical whizzes, be able to count things extremely fast, very good at addition, things like that. but oftentimes a lot of fixation on math and numbers. And one particular person I was working with, very fixated on time. So much so that every clock has to be synchronized. Every one. Like, it has to be to the second. Because if it's not, it's just a source of stress. Why does that clock say 11:51, but that one says 11:52? And it has nothing to do with a lack of intelligence. The intelligence is there. It's just an uneasy feeling that comes. And so it doesn't matter how many times you explain, like, well, it's difficult to get them totally synchronized. It just is an issue. And so you could manage that within a home, but you can't manage that out in the community. So if you're driving through town, for example, and there's a bank clock, and that bank clock is different than your car clock, why is that? And so, we work on those sorts of things, like that sort of fixation. Anyways, one of the reasons I love working with people with disabilities and autism, they have a different way of thinking of the world, which I think really helps me think of the world differently. And so I was driving the other day, and we had daylight savings time. We had to put clocks back and things like that. And my phone was up on the dashboard of my car. And on the phone, it's this phone, it was on, you can see it has the time. So there it is. It's sitting there on the dashboard. And the person I'm with's in the passenger seat. And the time says on my phone, like 10:30 a.m., right? And then we drive past a bank, and it says like 10:32 a.m. And he says to me, "What time's right?" And I said, "My phone's the right time, but you know how it is. It's hard to get them exact, so it's close enough." And he says, "How do you know your phone's right?" And I was like, "Well, because it changes automatically. It's set like through satellites and computers and stuff." And he's like, "Well, how do you know that's right?" And it's actually a deeper question. First you're like, because it's right. But then when you think about it, it's like, that's a really good question. How do I know? Well, it's because I have trust, right? I just trust that whoever it is that's changing the times with daylight savings time and stuff like that in my phone, and that's keeping this sort of clock, I trust that they're doing it accurately. And I know that this phone and my wife's phone and everyone that has an iPhone, and maybe Androids, I don't know if Androids are going off to the same clock, but all those phones are going to be matched up. And because almost everyone has a phone like that, that means that for all intents and purposes, that's the time. Because we've all agreed that's the time. Because we're all relying on this phone. But then I thought, like, what if they were just like, we're going to set it back a minute. We're going to steal a minute. What if they did that? What if everyone's phone right now, everyone's computer, every electronic device, what if at 3 a.m. today, it just goes to 3:01 instead of 3, it skips 3 a.m.? All your your TV, all of that. Everything that's hooked up to the web. What would happen? How would you know? Right? And you would say, well, there are certain clocks that are like for this very purpose, that are very accurate that would be like, well, that one didn't skip ahead. It's not connected to the internet. It's a mechanical clock and it didn't skip ahead. But how easy would it be to convince people of that? And so the question is, can you change reality by just enough people agreeing? I was thinking about that the other day while I was driving around. And then Twitter's ending. And so weirdly, at 1 a.m. in bed looking at my phone, that's the question I was asking myself. Like, what if enough people just like say, that's it, that's the end of Twitter? Could it be? Could they? Because everyone was just acting like it was the case. It's the end. That's the end. This is it. This is the last day. And not just that, right? Because those comments, okay, that's one level of it. But it was the comments that were sort of a sub-level of that were saying like, it's been a great time. But I can't believe this guy, such a shrewd businessman. Maybe he's not a good businessman. He just buried Twitter. It was like it was already a done deal. And then, like I saw someone tweet out today, it was like, listen to this. NPR did like a podcast or something today all about Elon ending Twitter, destroying Twitter. And then the show ends by them saying, follow NPR on Twitter. And it's just like, you start to see how our reality is shaped by people that control a narrative. And another thing is this FTX scam. If you went to the New York Times today, or to Forbes, or the Washington Post, and you read about the FTX scam, this is what you would hear about. This altruistic man, SBF, and this woman that ran Almeda, who were just these sort of regular nerdy people who really wanted to help a bunch of people out, but got over their heads. That's the narrative. That's what they're trying to paint this as. Can I explain how Zelensky's tied to FTX? Not really. I'll tell you, I have not done enough research on this to know. This is what I've heard. It appears as if much of the money that was being sent to Zelensky in Ukraine was then going through FTX for some sort of transition in the currency, like to fiat currency or something like that. I'm religious, JB. I consider myself a Christian. I'm sort of non-denominational, but I'm a poor practicing Christian. But I find your interpretation to be incorrect. The idea that we forget this world because Satan rules it, to me, is not the lesson to be gleaned from Christianity. The lesson is that we don't give up and rely on God to solve our problems, that we have faith in Jesus and faith in God, but we act on our own within the scope of what a Christian should do in order to solve problems. If you just say, well, this world's over, let God do what he wants, I think that's the wrong lesson. That's how I feel about it. Nonetheless, I'm not going to talk about religion that much. So, also, all caps, 3 words at a time. Come on, man. Feels spammy. But, as far as I know, let me check here real quick. Oh, looks like Twitter's still up. Oh. Yeah, there's all sorts of rumors. There's rumors that officials in Ukraine were buying huge properties in Europe and stuff. It's all a scam. Man, I'm just going to mute you. Like, I'll assume for that you're good faith and you really care and stuff. You're trying to preach gospel to people in all caps, 2 words at a time, is spamming the chat. It's not appreciated. If you would like to say something of a religious front and you could talk in non-caps in paragraph format, no problem. I'll probably ignore and proceed with the show, but it just feels like spam. So last time I'll mention it, and then I'm just going to mute you. No hard feelings. Yeah, that's how I always thought a friend of myself. It was always a cop-out. I give up. God will take care of everything. It's very similar to the Q. All right. I warned you, JB. See ya. Oh, for crying out loud. Is any of my mods on? Oh, goodness. My restream chat just went off. Well, I don't know if I muted or banned him or not, but if any of my mods are there, if you could. Jeez, man. So, all right. Now the name of the show. Let's do it, right? So I've been doing a series. This will be episode 3 in my series of blaming people for the Republican failures in the midterm. Let's set the stage briefly. It was a failure. I know that the Republicans won the House. There are things that they could do in the House, but it was not the red wave that was predicted, and people that are telling you otherwise are trying to gaslight you. That's just the truth. If they would have picked up at least 51 seats in the Senate, maybe then you could say, okay, this was a victory, but not controlling the Senate is a failure. It's a failure based on historically what midterms look like when you have a ruling party that controls the presidency and the House and the Senate in that first midterm, particularly when things aren't going good in the country. And not only are things not going good, they're in many senses historically bad when you look at like the border and when you look at inflation numbers, verge of World War III, etc. So it wasn't a victory. Episode 1, I blamed myself. Episode 2, I blamed certain Republicans and Trump supporters that believed sort of trust the plan type stuff like Q people or 15 days to slow the spread, those sorts of people. The other precursor I'll say before we get into this is there are a litany of reasons to blame. Candidate quality is one. The specific people that I'm talking about is another. But by and far, the biggest reason that Republicans lost is that ballots matter, not votes. That's the biggest reason. And so the change in the voting system is the biggest reason. And so much of my focus is how did that voting system change and who's responsible? So, Episode 1 was me. Episode 2 was the aforementioned certain Trump supporters, Q people, Republican supporters. Episode 3, Donald J. Trump. Now, if you follow my channel, you know this. I supported Trump. I volunteered for his campaign. I was offered a job through his campaign. However, contrary to what shill lefties come in here and say, I did not follow Trump on everything he did. I criticized Trump when I thought that it warranted, oftentimes quite vocally, quite angrily. Certain things I criticized Trump on before 2020 would be bombing Syria, blowing out the budget, putting people like John Bolton, listening to people like Bill Barr, not outing the corruption at the FBI, etc. In March of 2020 was my biggest disagreement with Trump probably, which was him advocating for lockdowns, which I knew, in addition to being incredibly damaging for the whole country, would be the beginning of the end of his re-election bid because it would devastate the economy and he would get the blame for it. So if you're tuning in and you're like, Rob just kisses Trump's ass, you're wrong. If you're tuning in and it's like, Rob's a never Trumper that just blames Trump, you're wrong. I don't know what to say if it's your first time watching other than go back and watch thousands of hours of my videos that will easily disprove. Or you can ask people in the chat that have been here a while and have seen me on both sides of it. Nor is my blaming Trump saying that I would not support Trump for running in 2024. There are Trump's gun control. That's another issue, right, Vaughn? Yeah. I'm still up in the air. On paper, I prefer DeSantis as far as more statesman-like quality. He seems to pick the right enemies. He seems to be critical of the establishment, understands that the media are just propagandists. But I think that we probably still need demolition before we could rebuild. Trump is more of a demolition type person. DeSantis may give in to people like Paul Ryan that will be constantly whispering in his ear, trying to make him more establishment. So maybe Trump's preferable to that. On the other hand, Trump had his chance. He failed miserably when it came to outing the corruption and doing something about it. He outed the corruption, but he didn't do anything about it. So I'm up in the air. I've not officially endorsed a candidate for 2024 at this point, but I would certainly vote for either Trump or DeSantis at this point over pretty much anyone else that has their hat in the ring, unless someone like Rand Paul gets involved. Okay? So that sets the framework for what I'm going to talk about. The other thing to say is blaming Trump does not mean I'm saying, well, Mitch McConnell doesn't deserve any blame and Kevin McCarthy doesn't deserve any blame. It's all Trump. That is clearly not what I'm saying. In fact, it may come as no surprise to you that a future episode of this will include people like Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy. The rest of the GOP leadership. So I feel like I'm one of the only people that I see streaming or tweeting that's like, there is room to criticize Trump, but also room to criticize establishment GOP people. Feels like you're either on one side or the other, which I think is dumb. Why is Trump to blame? Two primary reasons. Well, but there's more than that even. Let's start with the lesser reasons. Trump was right to be very critical of the election in 2020. Now I'm on YouTube. So far be it for me to talk about fraud. And even in addition to that, it is not an unreasonable position to say, no doubt because of the massive change in the way that we voted, that there was more fraud than usual and that there was more mistakes that weren't fraudulent than usual. But that doesn't prove the election was stolen. For example, let's say that 5,000 votes were mistakes or fraudulent in Georgia in 2020. That wouldn't have turned that state. That's a reasonable position. It is reasonable for people to say, listen, I'm open to hearing you talk about potential fraud, but I haven't seen the proof that it would have changed the election. That is a very reasonable position. What's unreasonable is to say, most secure election ever, everything's been looked at, shut up. That is unreasonable. But I don't think you're an unreasonable person if your take is, I think that there was some amount of fraud, but I don't think it was enough to change things. I haven't seen proof. Nor do I think you're unreasonable if you say, I think that there was fraud and that was enough to change. Siri, what are you doing? Siri yelling at me there. Whatever. I chose not to, despite you would think the way YouTube gives me community guideline strikes, that I've been on here screaming, the election was stolen, Dominion voting machines. I've not. I challenge you to find me saying that. I haven't said that, but I still get censored as if I did for saying we should be allowed to look into it. Siri did call in. That was crazy. Oh, there I said it again. So Trump could talk about suspicions and the need to look into things. The problem is there's a way to do it. And Trump was very, very bad at how he went about this. And many Trump supporters were very bad. And the reason is people don't like a whiner. Listen, I could talk about my reasons for voting or not voting for someone until I'm blue in the face. We could talk about, as a society, what would be the best way to determine which candidate to pick. But the truth is, all that matters is how the voters decide. If 5% of us say, here is our formula for the best way to decide who to choose in an election, here, what their experience is, times, where they stand on these 5 specific issues, and then, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter if that's what 5% of us think, if 80% of the people are like, I'm going to vote for the cutest one. And reality matters. On a side note, this is the same sort of position I take on, does candidate choice matter? Well, of course. To some degree. Not so much for Democrats. We'll get to that in another episode. But they voted for a guy who's a human stroke meme. The quality of candidate, therefore, was far less important than some other issue, which is ballot harvesting, early mail-in voting. So we could talk until we're blue in the face of, should Dave McCormick have been the candidate as opposed to Dr. Oz? I don't think it would have changed anything. And even if it would have, the far greater problem is the way the votes are counted or collected. But talking specifically on, if you're trying to get, and this is the problem, right? And one of the reasons I'm talking about a lot of things that are to blame is, in order for Republicans, and more importantly than Republicans, but populists, and when I say populists, I mean people that want government to work for the average person. In other words, people that want our government to stop being corrupt. There are left-wing populists. In order for them to win, they have to be almost perfect. They have to increase the way they harvest ballots legally. They have to fight the mass changes in our voting systems. They have to have lawyers to make sure that people that vote in places like Maricopa County aren't disenfranchised because the voting machines went down. They have to have high-quality candidates. They have to focus on the right issues. They have to have good ads. They have to have money. They have to be using that money in strategic areas. They have to have a cohesive message as a party. If any one of those things fall flat, the advantage is heavily towards the Democrats. Why? Because the Democrats are the face of the establishment, of those that are in power. You know how we look at elections and we say, well, the incumbent has an advantage. Well, now don't look at it like elections. Look at it like just power. The incumbent, when it comes to control of our country and world, have a huge advantage. They have the power, so it's very difficult to take it away. And so, for example, they control all these institutions that control a narrative. That's why it doesn't matter if they have candidates that had strokes. They tell them to sit in the basement and have their team meme their way through the election because people could vote up to a month or two early. And the narrative that's out there will be the narrative that people vote for. Plus, they have people harvesting ballots, which means they get far more disinterested voters, etc., etc. The ideal Democratic candidate this time is someone in a coma who never once shows their face on TV. That way they could allow the institutions that control the narrative to push that narrative out there for years in advance if necessary, which will allow the early voting to siphon up those votes where those people have been informed by the narrative that was out there. So Republicans need to run, and more importantly, populists need to run perfect, basically, or near perfect. So yes, candidate quality matters. Not as much as changing the way we vote or knowing that the way we voted is changed, embracing that. But I digress. So when Trump is talking about, the election was stolen from me, that's not the right message, even if he believes it. Because it makes him sound like a whiner. It makes him sound like you're only concerned about this because you lost. That's what it makes it sound like. Now, you and me might say, well, yeah, wouldn't that be reasonable? I mean, maybe not that's why you're only concerned, but certainly if you feel legitimately that as the president of the United States that the election was stolen from you, surely that would be fresh on your mind when you run again or when you're supporting candidates. But it doesn't matter what we think. What matters is what the voting people think. I don't know, Bayjen. I kind of mentioned that earlier. Trump is one of the best candidates. I don't know if he's the best. Actually, not even close. There's probably a litany of people. Rand Paul would be better. Ron Paul would be better. But of the people that have their hat in the ring. Anyways. I talked to several people that were running for office. Many of them didn't even want to talk about election security. The problem is the way primaries work is oftentimes our primary system means you have to run to your extreme for the primary and then go back to the center for the general election. And so how can you win a primary, for example, in Pennsylvania? Because I'll tell you right now, Republicans were steaming hot that I knew about what they saw is the change in voting in 2020 in Pennsylvania and how it cost Republicans the state. They were mad. And so in the primary, they wanted someone talking about it. But I was talking to candidates that weren't that interested in that. They were interested in energy policy, things of that nature, stopping lockdowns. And so they were like, because they also were acutely aware that in Pennsylvania, the Democrats, Fetterman and Shapiro's candidate, even during Shapiro, who's now the governor, will be the governor, and Fetterman, who's now the senator, both Democrats, both were in the Wolf administration, the current governor of Pennsylvania. It was clear that the attacks that they were going to levy on Republicans, even during the primary, was election denier. And you could say what you want about how stupid or corrupt or whatever the Democratic Party is. They at least are saying a message that they think will be effective to a certain group of people. They're not clairvoyant, so I'm not saying they knew, this is the issue we'll win on. But it was clearly this was an issue that they saw as ripe for attacking. So you might say, I don't want to give them ammunition. If I come out and say, yeah, election problems, blah, 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 then Josh Shapiro's going to come out and say, see, it's one of those January 6th election deniers. This guy's not concerned about you economically. He's just an election denier. That's what they would say. So it's like, I don't even really want to talk about it. But if you don't talk about it, can you win the primary? And so what I was suggesting to people was, you appeal to both, and this is the correct approach. You appeal to both sides. The first thing you say is this: it doesn't matter if the 2020 election was stolen or not. What matters is, can elections in the future be trusted as secure? If there is room to exploit an election, eventually someone will attempt it. It could be a hostile foreign power. It could be a criminal within the United States. But either way, if there is potential for exploitation, inevitably it will be exploited. Because of that, people rightfully will have distrust in a process. And a state or country that cannot trust their process through elections will have trouble having effective governance. Therefore, it is our duty to make sure that the potential problems of the 2020 election are investigated, cleared up, and that any sort of loopholes through inefficiencies, corruption, errors, etc. are corrected to make sure that as many people vote as possible that want, and that there is no error, and that those votes are tabulated in the way that the person intended. Democrats should also be concerned about this. If they think someone like Donald Trump is a criminal, wouldn't they want to make sure that there is no possible way for exploitation for him or people associated with him if they choose to run for an election again? That's how you talk about it. You don't say, we were cheated, we lost, it's not fair. You say, we need to look into this because in the future, it will be exploited. So you don't say there was definitely cheating. Now, Lesko says there's no more group that's short-sighted. I know he's not talking specifically about that, but that does sort of apply. Are you going to convince Democrats? Of course not. Probably not most of them. But those moderate people that you're looking for, moderate Democrats or independents, that's a far more appealing message. And the truth is, regardless of what Trump supporters, myself, which is one, think, people found it petty. People found Trump to sound selfish after the 2020 election. That's the truth. And so when candidates are echoing him like it was stolen, the Democrats had a full court press on, that's selfish, that's stupid, they haven't proved it, plus they're anti-democratic insurrectionists. Now, is that a fair narrative? Of course not. For example, Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries, who's looking to take over for Pelosi in the House for Democrats, he's denied the legitimacy of the 2016 election. But that's the power of controlling the narrative. The moderates don't view Democrats as being election deniers, but some of them do view Republicans as that. So you have to craft the message better. So in that case, Trump and his rhetoric, instead of focusing on the 2022 and 2024 election, and instead making it at least narratively seem like it was, poor me, I got cheated, that was an ineffectual message, and that is partially Trump's fault. But that's a little thing. The other two things are far more. I don't know. Yeah, Key Lime, that's true. He says, of course you don't say there was definitive cheating because people would expect you, definite cheating, people would expect you to show evidence. Right. That's where the Democrats are smart. It's not like they ever said the 2016 election was illegitimate because they would have been asked to provide evidence. Oh, wait. That's what they all did for 4 years. My bad. But they control the narrative, so they're able to get away with it. I don't know what order to put these other two in, but they're both more important in blaming Trump than that. The first is the response to COVID. Almost every group that I'll talk about, other than me, who was the first person I blamed, this criticism applies. But it applies to Trump even more because he was president when it occurred. Donald Trump embraced lockdowns. Donald Trump ended up embracing a system of authoritarianism that was used to install the voting changes that will basically make it nigh on impossible for him to ever be elected again. That is the cold, harsh truth. That's it. Yeah, I know, Keelan, you have been consistent on that take, but certainly the Democrats weren't. That was their main issue. You could him and haw. Well, but he left it up to the governors, and he didn't actually himself do lockdown. He didn't actually say that we needed to change how we voted. It doesn't matter. That's how authoritarianism works. You opened the space ever so briefly for the authoritarians to walk into, and they exploited that. And they kept the space open. I was saying it. I was saying early and often. I said, Dr. Fauci even came out and said it would be safe to vote in person. So why do we need all these emergency measures? One of Trump's weak suits is he doesn't say, I messed up, I did that wrong. But he should. As someone who's so focused on, let's approach it through Trump's eyes. Let's say if you're Trump and you legitimately think, I think the election was stolen from me. Okay. Clearly, the criminals that would steal an election are at fault. And YouTube, I'm not saying this is reality. I'm just saying if this is what Trump's thinking. But how did the criminals accomplish this feat? If a criminal breaks into your house and steals all your money, you definitely blame the criminal, but maybe you also blame the fact that you told everyone in town that you had a bunch of money hidden under your mattress and that you left the door unlocked. Same thing here. I wonder if Trump has any self-reflection. And it's not just Trump. We'll get to the rest. For example, my state of Pennsylvania, the man who ran for governor, who I heavily supported and liked, Doug Mastriano voted for Act 77. Act 77 was the act that meant we changed the way we voted in Pennsylvania. Early mail-in ballots, signature verification didn't have to match. And then, when Republicans lost, Doug Mastriano and a bunch of other state Republicans were like, it's not fair. That's not right. You voted for it. Because COVID was scary. That's how Trump was. It's a tough pill to swallow. I'm not saying that means like, oh, Trump's discredited from anything ever again. I'm not saying that. But I'm telling you that's the truth. And to a lesser extent, Trump's also responsible as some sort of leader in the Republican Party. Less responsible than the actual official leaders like Mitch McConnell or Kevin McCarthy. But still, as a de facto leader of sorts, for not changing how they went about elections, knowing that the rules changed. Trump, like many other Republicans, whined about the change in voting, knew that they weren't going to be able to change it back, and yet did nothing to adapt to that change. Imagine it like this. Did you know that when American football first came out, you weren't allowed to pass the ball? It was all running, right? So let's say then that one particular team gets a quarterback that just for whatever reason can throw a ball like crazy, and none of the other quarterbacks in the league can. And they lobby and lobby and lobby, and eventually the football league's like, okay, you can throw the ball. Now this team's winning every game. Because they got the only quarterback that could throw. And the other teams are like, that's not fair. That's a strategic advantage for them. Well, that's fine. You could lobby to change the rule back, but you better be finding a quarterback that could throw the ball. You don't just say it's not fair and then lose. Trump raised a lot of money and didn't spend a lot of money. True. You might say, well, that's not his job as much as the people running the GOP. Absolutely agree. But just saying. Trump backed bad candidates like Dr. Oz. It's true. Dr. Oz is a terrible candidate. Wasn't from Pennsylvania, was seen as sort of a charlatan television doctor. Someone who had waffled on positions. Looked to be someone trying to buy a Senate seat. If you remember way back when Oz first won the primary, one of the shows I did, I said, all of the Democrat attacks on Dr. Oz right now are absolutely true. Thanks for the follow. They were. He's a carpetbagger. Yeah, he is. I still did my best to support Dr. Oz, try to bring him across the finish line, did videos, did a live stream. But that's the truth. He wasn't a good candidate. I would have preferred Carlos Sands or Kathy Barnett. Dave McCormick sucked too, let's be clear, but... And there were candidates like that all over that Trump endorsed. Not all of them. Blake Masters, a great candidate. Right? Joe Kent, great candidate. Kerry Lake, great. But some of the ones he picked were bad. And then it's up there with the COVID stuff, but probably higher. The absolute biggest reason to blame Donald Trump for the 2022 election was that Donald Trump accomplished something that I would have thought to have been impossible. Donald Trump was a perceived outsider that won the presidency of the United States. Even on election night in 2016, when it looked like, oh my God, he's going to win, I didn't believe it. I believed that our establishment was so corrupt that it just wouldn't happen. And it did. And I think the reason was they believed their own bullshit. They literally believed Hillary Clinton had a 99 to 1% chance of winning the election. Just like they believed, give the people a vote on Brexit. We'll shovel all the propaganda we can on why Brexit would be bad. Leave them vote. It'll lose. We'll say, there, you had your democracy. Now shut your mouth. Except, didn't go that way. Same with Trump. They underestimated people's anger at the establishment. They underestimated people that felt, rightly or wrongly, that Trump inspired them to go out and vote for the first time ever. So why is this a reason that Trump's to blame for the loss in 2022? I had said something many times on this channel that was massively unpopular. I think I started saying it in 2019. Hillary Clinton is about the least favorite person that I would ever want being president of the United States. I'd take Joe Biden 20 times in a row before one Hillary Clinton. I'd take Barack Obama before a Hillary Clinton. She represents everything wrong with the leadership class in this country. The nepotism, the corruption, the years of backroom, shady, horrible deals. I was ecstatic to see her lose. I voted for Donald Trump for one reason. corruption. It's why I would vote for Jill Stein over Jeb Bush. But Jill Stein's progressive socialist. Yeah. Corruption is an a priori issue. If the people in our politics are unanswerable to the American citizens, then any issue I have becomes irrelevant. You think global warming's a big issue? Well, you better hope that the bureaucrats agree with you because they're running the show. Your vote doesn't matter. If you have the puppet on the left or the puppet on the right, your only hope is the puppets agree with you. So until we end the puppetry, does the specific issue matter? It's Trump. I said if he would win, it would out the corruption like we'd never see. It's exactly what happened. Almost immediately. In a way that was so blatant, you could see that the FBI, the media, social media companies, tech, the entertainment industry, academia, you could see how they were all part of one big group. How shameless they were. Propagandists, team partisan players, didn't give a shit about the truth, didn't care about the success of the country. Some of them went on TV and said, we're praying for a recession. They cheered violence in the street or ignored it. They cheered when disasters occurred. They still do. Boy, they were really hoping DeSantis dropped the ball in Florida there when that hurricane hit, weren't they? You could see them seething. Does ivermectin work? I said, I don't know. I have no clue if ivermectin works. But what I know is so many people on the left are praying it doesn't. That I know. Same with hydrochloroquine. Please don't let it work. Trump suggested it. That would be terrible if lives were saved and Trump got credit for it. That's how they felt. They wanted to make your life painful. All of it out in the open for everyone to see. Anyone who's remotely objective has no doubt how corrupt our mainstream media is now. None. Partisan players. That's it. Propagandist. Same with the intel agencies. Same with the State Department. Same with the Department of Homeland Security. But the second part, after outing the corruption, is doing something about it. And what I said that was unpopular on my show, when it became evident to me that Donald Trump, not because he was playing 4D chess, not because he's some genius, I think Donald Trump is a very smart person. I think Donald Trump is a far more impressive person than I'll ever be. No matter how much shit I talk on him, he made it to the presidency of the United States with almost every institution in this country fighting against him. That's an achievement that is unbelievable. Biggest underdog election win probably ever of this sort of national scale. So I'm not belittling his accomplishment. But he wasn't this guy playing 4D chess that the QAnon people would have you believe. Every move carefully planned out. Most of it was just off the cuff. The reason I knew he would out the corruption had nothing to do with him. It was because I knew that the corrupt wouldn't be able to help themselves. When you have total control over these institutions, you refuse to accept any slip of that control. Why? Because if an outsider comes in, they might say, wow, look how corrupt this is. If the people saw this, they would be appalled. And you can't have that. If you're one of the people on Epstein's client list, you can't afford them to out other people on that list because you know you might be next. Same sort of thing here. If you have this mass control and have been involved in shady dealings, regardless if you're Republican, Democrat, or any other, you don't want that system to stop. You have control. That's good. You don't want an outsider. You don't want an outsider like Trump. You don't want an outsider like Tulsi. In 2016, they were worried about Bernie being an outsider. Don't worry, though. Bernie kissed their ass for 4 years trying to say, I come to you now to ask for your confidence that I am now an establishment warmonger. Good job, Bernie. You did it, man. Hope it was worth it. Hope that third lake house was worth it, buddy. Sold out everything you pretended to believe in. Great job. So it wasn't that Trump was a genius. It was they couldn't help themselves. They went all guns blazing. Chuck Schumer said it. They'll find 6 ways of Sunday. Trump can't criticize the establishment. The intel agencies will find 6 ways from Sunday to bag him. That was exactly right. It's the worst kept secret in the world. Oh boy, this guy's challenging these corrupt institutions. They're coming out guns a-blazing. And they did. Blatantly. Impeachments and They investigated him for colluding with Russia. And the way they did it was by colluding with Russians themselves. He gets peed on by hookers. Whatever, let's spy on him. That's how blatant it was. I was talking to Pisco the other day. That's what I said. He's like, well, they wouldn't do something that blatant. Something that blatant. They used opposition research paid for by the DNC and Hillary, sourced by a Russian spy that they didn't even try to verify to spy on Trump's team. It doesn't get much more brazen than that. The media breathlessly reported. The media was saying shit like mostly peaceful as fires raged behind them. It was insanity. Normie people that didn't even pay attention to politics were looking like, what the hell is going on here? Couldn't believe the corruption of our media. You know, allegedly, there was a book, I forget the name of the book, Jimmy Dore talks about it, that this guy was in the Hillary camp's election headquarters on election night in 2016, and allegedly she said, oh shit, if he wins, we're all going to hang. I don't know if she said that, but I believe that mentality existed amongst people like James Comey and Hillary Clinton, which was, we're in a lot of trouble. This guy's going to start to reveal stuff that shows how corrupt we are. And once that house of cards starts to fall, it's going to bring down an awful lot of people. And the American people aren't going to like to see how corrupt this system is. I believe they were afraid. For the first time in many, many years. But then something amazing happened. Nothing. So much of the evidence was laid bare for the American people, and the propagandists kept trying. They kept putting their shields. New York Times kept trying. Washington Post kept trying. MSNBC kept trying. CNN kept trying. All the entertainers kept trying, you know, your favorite rap artist and your favorite basketball player, right? And academia was trying. They're all trying, full court press. And they were leaking stuff about Trump. Trump said shithole country. Yeah, Trump said shithole. Trump made fun of a mentally challenged or a person with disabilities that was reported. Yeah, he did that. Trump's a racist. Yeah, Trump's going to lock up all the LGBT people. Yeah, he did that. Trump said that, you know, told people to drink hydrochloric. Yeah, Trump said Nazis were good people. Yeah. And they just kept heaping it on and heaping it on and heaping it on. And then all these people that were, you know, Trump had around him, like your Bill Barrs and all these people, they kept telling Trump, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. We'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. And they kept investigating Trump, and they were taking Trump people down. And then there were people that did the same crimes that were on the other side, and they kept letting those people go. And then something weird started to happen. People started to accept it. Even people like me started to accept it. You came to expect it. Nothing's going to happen. They're just going to keep talking about it. And we're going to keep seeing how corrupt it is. And nothing's going to happen to these motherfuckers. And they're getting away with it. I can see they're getting away with it. And the people surrounding Trump that he's tasked with doing this, they're letting them get away with it. And Trump's probably sitting there listening to Bill Barr. And Bill Barr's probably telling him, yeah, we're going to get it. We're going to out all this. Don't worry. The American people will see how unfair the system was to you. Don't worry, Mr. Trump. Don't worry, Mr. President. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And then Barr's just burying it. And he's burying it. And he's burying it. And that's what John Bolton's doing. And that's what Mike Pompeo's doing, and that's what Mike Pence is doing, and that's what they're all doing. And then, nothing. And one day, James Comey woke up and was like, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to tweet. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to smile. I'm going to laugh. And Hillary Clinton was putting up, here's some mugs I'm selling. What about her emails? They're laughing in your fucking face. They're laughing at you. Yeah, we did it. Fuck you. What are you going to do? Because Trump failed. He failed. He failed because he didn't understand the depths of how corrupt the system was. He failed because he claimed that he only appointed the best people and he appointed the worst people. He failed because he believed that he was untouchable. He failed because he believed he would have 4 more years, definitely. My wife drank 5 White Claws. Uh-oh. Do I have to get a bucket to take into the room? You're going to be thrown up? And the question I asked that was very unpopular way back in 2019 was the following. When it comes to the issue of corruption only, would we have been better off if Hillary Clinton had won? If I told you in 2017, 2018, while Trump is president, they will lock you down, tell you you can't go to church, but you can go to the liquor store. You can't go to your work, but you could go to the casino. You can't go visit your grandparents in the nursing home, but politicians can go to the French Laundry and get their hair done. That they would intentionally shut down large swaths of the economy. And not only that, they would get away with it so much that our cultural system would shame the people that spoke up, and they would be censored for speaking up. Not just through government pressure, but also because a plurality of people would buy into it and say, this is good, thank you for locking us down. That they would adapt a sort of cult-like personality about it. You'd say they wouldn't have the balls to do something that corrupt. Well, they do now. If I told you they're going to raid a former president's home because they think he might have kept some keepsakes, you would have said, not a chance. They do now. It'll be released that people in the administration were directly contacting social media companies saying, take people down that criticize us on this issue, or take this specific person off. You would have said, oh man, people would be outraged. They'd never get away with that. But it happened. And it's getting worse. And the reason it's getting worse is the corruption was always sort of the boiling frog theory, that it slightly gets more corrupt over time. And you're willing to accept slight increases in infringements on your freedom. You'll take the Patriot Act to fight terrorism, but you're not willing to get to the point where it's just Mao's China yet. Right? Slow, incremental. And then it was all thrown in the American people's face. And they accepted it. And Trump failed. And now as a consequence, the corruption is right out in the open. They're not trying to hide it. Merrick Garland's going after parents that are angry at school board meetings. I'm not saying he wasn't the best thing we had available or the best thing we have, but he did fail. And that's why the 2020 elections went the way they did. Because he failed. Because corruption can now flourish even more than before he was there. That's the truth. Did he fail because he was in on it the whole time? I don't think so, but maybe. Did he never have a chance to succeed anyways because the corruption was so magnanimous? Perhaps. If he would have done some things better, could he have succeeded? Maybe. But he failed. That's the truth. Now, we're all suffering to some extent because of that. Increased censorship, arbitrary lockdowns, inflation, verge of World War III, border crisis. But Trump's going to pay bigger consequences. Trump's going to get charged. Trump's life's going to be hell the rest of his life. Unless he wins and can use that position to do something. Or if he has an ally win who uses that position to do something. Now, I begged Trump. He ain't listening to me, I assure you. But I begged Trump and anyone that would listen, please get rid of Bill Barr. Please release the evidence of the FBI's corruption unredacted to the American people so they could see what they did. Please. Please show the American people. You have the power as president to unredact all this stuff and release it. Please do so. And he didn't do it. He trusted the plan. He trusted Bill Barr. Now, Bill Barr's out there today and said it would be an absolute shame if Trump got the nomination for 2024. That's who you trusted. He did. He extended the delay on the Kennedy. He did a lot of things, right, that played right into their hands. He's listening to Jared Kushner and Ivanka. Norms, the norms crowd. Got to go by the norms. Can't release things. It's got to be by the book, norms. Bill Barr came out today and said it would be a shame if Trump was the nominee in 2024. That's the guy that Trump trusted. That's the guy QAnon trusted. That I told him. I was doing videos outlining crimes of people like Andrew McCabe and James Comey and James Clapper. Here's some quotes from Bill Barr today. This is a guy Trump trusted. I personally think that they probably have the basis for legitimately indicting the president. They probably have the evidence. I think it's becoming increasingly more likely. Barr on Trump. He failed. He didn't do what the country hoped, that he would rise to the occasion and rise to the office, and he didn't do that. He had his chance. He obviously doesn't have the qualities necessary. He should stand aside. There's Bill Barr. Trust the plan. That's on Trump. That's his guy. I knew it. How did I know? I was able to look. Like, isn't it funny? Bill Barr thinks they have enough to indict Trump. What about enough to indict Comey? What about enough to indict McCabe? They had McCabe dead to rights. Dead to rights. A grand jury recommended indicting James Comey. And Bill Barr declined. And now he's out there saying, yeah, I think they got enough to indict Trump. That's the guy he trusts. There you go. That's a tough pill to swallow if you're a Trump supporter. But that's the truth. I'm not saying that disqualifies Trump. In fact, maybe if you think Trump has any sense, if he wins again, he would say, enough of that shit. I'm unredacting everything. I'm going guns a-blazing against the FBI and this corruption. Maybe he'd be more likely to do it this time because he would realize all those people that told me, no, you got to follow norms and blah, 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 were actually working against me. So maybe he would do that. Maybe not, though. Maybe he won't. But Trump will pay the price. He's going to be indicted. His family is going to be scrutinized the rest of their life if he doesn't win now. It's all in now. In for a penny, in for a pound. He has no choice. He needs that office now to protect him. Yeah, I don't think DeSantis, as much as I like him, I don't think he would just even come close to dismantling the FBI. Trump wouldn't either, though. That's what needs to happen. So when I see Trump supporters like, how dare anyone blame Trump for the 2022, for the candidates that lost and blah, 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 blah. Look, I might not be blaming him as the same way that never Trump Republicans are, but he deserves blame. He absolutely does. It's probably true, Galil. Look, there's a significant possibility if he would ever do if any politician or figure could ever do anything to really stop the corruption, I'll just be as vague as I can. They might not get a chance to do that. What politician do I think would disband the FBI? Me? That's about it. There'd be people that would do good things with it. Rand Paul, probably. I would do it unquestioningly, immediately. So, that's it. That's why Donald Trump is partially to blame for the disappointing 2022 midterm. I think Trump was right to come out and announce early. I think he knew that this indictment was coming, or that this special counsel or some sort of increase in the investigation was coming. And so it gives him some amount of armor to say, well, I'm a candidate for president. I don't think it'll matter, but it will help buttress his argument that this is all political stunt, which it is, to go after him. But it's probably too little too late for Trump. He probably doesn't have a path to win, if I'm honest. I don't know that I'm at this point. I'm cynical enough to say if even if DeSantis has a better chance to win, he'll only be allowed to win if he becomes more establishment, which basically, if you win, it's because you won't do anything effective anyways. That's why you're winning. And what do you mean would only be allowed to win? That they'll rig jury or voting machines? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you'll see never Trump Republicans come up against DeSantis too and do enough to swing the election against him. 2016 was unique because they had hubris. They believed it was happening. The establishment around the world, the globalists around the world, did not understand how powerful the populist anger was. In Europe, in places like with Brexit, in the United States, with Bernie getting so much support and Trump getting support, they didn't get it. Now they get it. They get it now. And trust me, they've gone to work to deflate that populism. And they've been effective. It doesn't mean that I'm black-pilled. But if I'm being honest, I'm just telling you, it's going to be a tough road to hoe for any Republican that would actually do anything. How can anyone win at Pennsylvania? Good question. 99% chance they can't. What politicians would I trust? I said, me. Trust me. At least now. Maybe I won't in a year from now. But yeah. So that was episode 3 at Pointing the Finger. Now I'm sure that'll get a lot of hatred from Trump supporters, but that's the truth. Supporting someone does not mean blindly following everything they do as the greatest move ever. That's bullshit. That's not support. That's cults. I supported Trump because he represented something. An outsider challenging a corrupt establishment. If Trump starts to act in ways that benefit the establishment, I don't support that. That's why I didn't support lockdowns. That's why I didn't support bombing Syria. That's why I didn't support signing trillion-dollar spending bills. But so many Trump supporters were like, nope, everything the man does is 4D chess. Trust the plan. It's brilliant. And so when I'm saying, why is Trump still trusting Bill Barr? They're telling me, we knew you were a secret Trump hater all along. Why is Trump endorsing lockdown states like New York and California? We knew you were a secret anti-Trumper. That's despite the fact I spent hours volunteering for his campaign. I don't understand this blind faith. You shouldn't have blind faith in any human, let alone a politician. All right. Well, that'll about wrap up my show tonight. Next week, this is a weird... Oh, my goodness. Aftershock's setting up this Thursday interview show. He's lining up guests, which is cool. And unfortunately, it's gone off the rails already in week 2 because Andrew Wilson, BPF from The Crucible and comfy.stream, was invited to come on, and he said he doesn't want to do an interview. Instead, he wants to do a debate. Now, I don't mind doing a debate, but the Thursday show was supposed to be for interviews. But it looks like it'll be a debate next week. The debate topic is one which I have zero interest in debating, but for Andrew, I'll debate it. And that topic is, should we tax churches? And Andrew is going to advocate yes, and I will say no. Now, I know that it's a trap. No, it's not that I don't want to do it. But it's a trap. I know how Andrew thinks, and I have what I'm going to do before the debate is I'm going to write down on a piece of paper and fold it up. And I'm going to set the paper here. and then we'll do the debate. And then at the end of the debate, I'll unfold the paper and we'll have written down, this is what I think Andrew will do. This will be his strategy. No, Aftershock, I'm not upset about it at all. I'm not. That's not what I mean to say here. It's one of those things that I can see both sides of the argument, but I don't feel incredibly strong about. But I think that debating it will help solidify my position. So I will argue against taxation of churches. And there are legitimate reasons that it's bad to tax churches. But it won't. It's something you learned in policy debate in college. Like, you could have two different groups that are diametrically opposed advocate for the same thing for the complete opposite reason. So let's say that you have a Republican capitalist, right, that says, I think that Trump should be president because it would help the economy and it would help fight corruption and this and this. And then you have a environmentalist, vegan leftist and says, I too think Trump should be president. And you'd be like, oh, that's great. And they say, because I think he'll lead to nuclear war and wipe out all humans, and humans are evil. But both want Trump to be president. So if you're debating on the opposite side of that, like, I don't want Trump to be president, right? If you're debating that Republican, your arguments are going to be very different than you're debating the left. Because if you're debating the Republican, you might say things like, Trump would be a disaster. He'll cause war. He'll cause devastation. He'll wipe out humanity. And if you say that argument to the other team, they'll go, yes, exactly. Agreed. That's a good thing. Right? And I heavily suspect that's what this debate. Andrew's not going to say churches are bad and therefore they deserve to be taxed. Andrew's a Christian nationalist. So his angle is going to be taxing churches will actually help churches get more influence in our political system. I guess I'm giving the game away. I was going to write it down. He'll basically make the argument that taxation of churches is one of the first steps to eroding the idea that there should be a separation of church and state. I believe that's what his argument will be. Or that it'll galvanize enough people in the church to start to point out the authoritarianism of the left and start to fight back more in the culture war. That'll be his argument. That's vastly different than if I'm debating synth, right? Because synth's argument will be, absolutely should tax churches. They have no reason that they shouldn't be paying in. They're basically political movements anyway, so they absolutely should have to pay into the pool. A completely different argument. You know, but it'll be interesting. I'll have a lot of fun with it. I think it'll be fun. But it's not an issue that I particularly think strongly about. But for the sake of, it's Andrew. I like talking to Andrew, and I think it'll be fun. It's funny. BPF's fair, yeah. Right? That's another possible argument. Get away with all 501c3s. Yeah. There's a lot of reasons, right? No, I'll be ready to argue against that. Yeah, Casimir was a fun interview. I agree. I'm glad people enjoyed that. Like I said, some dude, I know there's a person who goes by the name Some Dude on my Discord. And Some Dude, I know it's one of you, I just don't know which one, sent me an awesome list of people to contact. And so I am going to try to contact those people as potential guests. I think that'll be great. Also, Aftershock, I saw you were on here. I have no idea. I set on my Discord that my invite link should never expire. And yet, the link that I have posted, people keep saying it says invalid. I don't know how. I just want one link that works forever for my Discord. But there's the current link. So if that's different than the link you saw, if you're not in my Discord, you could get on there. So that'll be next Thursday. Some other things coming up. I got some stuff, irons in the fire with Alex Stein. I'm going to be doing some stuff with Alex Stein coming up in the near future. Also, John Burke has a podcast. I'm going to be a guest on his podcast. It was supposed to be this week, but then my work kind of interfered. Next week, I think he's out of town. So the week after that, I will be on John Burke's podcast. That will not be streamed on my show because that's actually a call-in. Though I guess I could just call here, and I guess I could. Or I could call through Google Voice, I guess. But so I'll try to stream it. I'll try. But that's a noon show, noon to 1:30. So I should be on. Yeah, John, but Nico gets it. I should be on with John Burke. And that's a chance to reach an audience that maybe doesn't always listen to me. So that'll be good. And I'm keeping my ears open. Aftershock's doing a great job reaching out to people. Try to get new types of people connected. Still had an invitation to go on Sitch and Adams' show. I haven't heard back from them. Still got my name out there to debate people pretty much anytime they want, within reason. So, well, Drew, interesting you should say that. Or people, that's not, see, I'm so out of the loop. I talk to people, but I don't know what's public knowledge. So, Drew the Dogman, is it public knowledge that Alex Stein has a show coming out on The Blaze? I was vague about it because I didn't know that people knew that. But obviously you know it, and I don't think it's because you have some insider information. So did people know that? Yeah, I'm sorry, Jordan, it does. Yeah, I'm not giving up on this platform, Let's Go. Now, listen, the best place to follow me, I'm streaming to comfy.stream right now as well. So you can follow me over there. Which is an excellent platform ran by my friend Andrew Wilson, the aforementioned Andrew Wilson, who's a free speech advocate, conservative. And if you donate money over there, I get almost all of it. So, yeah, I agree. The Blaze is better than the Daily Wire. But yeah, if you didn't know, Alex Stein's going to have a show on The Blaze that's ran by Glenn Beck. Dogman's deep inside. And yeah. I've talked to him, and thanks, Rail. I really appreciate the sub, man. I've talked to Alex, and I'm going to at least be making one appearance on that show. And I think that's, I can't say enough good things about Alex Stein. I really can't. There are people out there, it's young. I used to consider myself young. No more, I'm 38. So the white beards tell the truth, the white beard hair. So many young people, I think, give me hope. Scott Pressler. Amazing. Scott Pressler. If I do 1 ounce of good, Scott Pressler does thousands of gallons of good. Going out in the street in the name of conservatism, cleaning up neighborhoods, registering people to vote. Now he's going to start working on legal ballot harvesting. Absolutely phenomenal guy. Someone through his own bootstraps, no connections, went out there, said, I'm going to make a difference. He should be looked at as the model that the GOP is using. Absolutely incredible guy. Alex Stein. You might not think everything Alex Stein does is funny. Sometimes he tells jokes that aren't really my cup of tea. But he is someone who understands the response to these people, these insane lefties, is to laugh at them. That sometimes humor is the only solution to it. He's out there. He's one of the hardest working people I know. You see that guy, you'll see him do a video at some town council meeting in San Diego, and then the next day he's harassing Dan Crenshaw in Pittsburgh. It's like, how the hell does he do it? I don't know. I told him he's like the James Brown of like political trolling. It's amazing. Alex Stein, for all the stuff I've done, talking to gubernatorial candidates and talking to county chairs and going to Republican meetings and streaming and doing debate platforms and, all of that, beating left-wing debaters at debates and stuff like that. My reach is a pittance of Alex Stein's. A pittance. And I have through all those connections I've made, I've got nothing as far as an offer to be on a bigger platform. A lot of people in this space are like, what can you do for me? But when it comes to, well, can you come on my 24-hour show? Can I come on your show? It's always, oh, sorry. Not Alex Stein. Every single time I've asked Alex to come on my show or anything, he's like, absolutely, I'll be there whenever you need. And that's a guy traveling across the country like a maniac. And I reached out to him and was just thanking him for being on my 20. Thanks, Old Gamer Mike. Really appreciate the sub. Thanking him for being on my stream. And I was like, we'll have to do something. He's like, yeah, I got a show coming up in The Blaze. I want you on like as soon as it starts. Alex Stein. See if I can link his Twitter. But Alex has been on Tucker several times. Here, I'll show you a little clip. I do have to end here by 11:30. I'll show you a little clip of Alex Stein. Him on Tucker here.
They give us the crack pipe all day long, yet on that same laptop there's supposedly child pornography on it. And these people don't care. Look at Ketanji Brown Jackson, who's about to be nominated to the Supreme Court. She's easy on child pornography. Do you think that's an accident, Tucker? None of this is done on accident. It is a purposeful destabilization of the middle class. And that's what I am. I'm a middle-class person trying to save it. And I'm not here to virtue signal. I'm just saying I'm tired of being tinkled on and the government telling me it's raining.
Well, I agree with that. And you don't need...
It's just a little bit, but check it out there. I put his link up. He's amazing. He's great. And they, and you might think, I think he's childish. I don't think what he's doing is funny. That's fine. But understand, that's the type of people that we need going forward. Because conservatism, populism, the Republican Party is looked at as stodgy, as for old people. And the reality is, we are actually the people that have fun. We're not going to try to cancel you because you told an insensitive joke in your yearbook 30 years ago. That's not us. That's why people like Jim Bob that I talked to the other day are so great. We have a sense of humor. We're not exploding. We're not doing drama streams because we're so upset. The world's after us. So yeah, I do got some irons in the fire. We'll see what comes of it. Also working to try to get connections more to the Pennsylvania State Party because I am going to start trying my best to push for a change in leadership and a change in how the Pennsylvania GOP views elections to move forward with legal attempts at collecting ballots and see what we can do going forward on that front. So it should be a good week. So I should see you all Monday night. Again, it'll be an audio only show because I won't be at my home office. But yeah, let's find someone to raid. Apparently I could set it up so I could raid people on YouTube too. I just don't know how to do that right now. So I'll look into that. Oh, let's see. Lecture Fan, Tiberius, or BX Bullet. Y'all's choice. Thanks, Railman. I appreciate it. We're rating either Lecture Fan, Tiberius D, or BX Bullet. Lecture? Okay. Me and Lecture are going to have it out. Oh, one of each. Me and Lecture are going to have it out of here because I think Lecture's like a Mike Pence fan. This is going to be a good debate. I'm going to go at it. I'm not a fan of the Mike Pompeo, Mike Pence. But Lecture's a good guy. And he has the right idea. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm having Thanksgiving dinner with the in-laws tomorrow. I'm going to go down, hang out with my wife, and watch monkey television shows while she drunkenly rambles about something because she drank 5 White Claws and made awesome stuffing balls, which if she made some ready-to-eat stuff, I'll probably sneak into the fridge here. But, yeah, let's go. Maybe so. We'll see. So, all right. Thank you all so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. I look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a great weekend. And as always, have a good one.